But no, she still had that inner beauty, Tamim Hashem, that she was never worried, nothing stared her.
Wherever you get your podcasts from, or our own website, prismoftorah.com. This is The Prism of Torah with Rabbi Saf Aaron Prisman.
Shalom Avracha. In this week's Parshas Chayei, Sarah, we know the famous pasuk that tells us about Sarah Imenu, how long she lived. And it says that Sarah's lifetime was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, the years of Sarah's life. So it seems to be very redundant. And indeed, Rashi brings the famous midrash that explains why it was written like that. It says, it's to teach you that the word years was written after each category to make sure you understand that when she was 100, it's as if she was 20, that she didn't reach an age where she really did any sins. And when she was 20, her beauty in the age of 20 was as if she was a 7-year-old. Question number one, everyone knows that a 20-year-old reaches more of the peak of beauty as opposed to a 7-year-old. So why is Rashi bringing down this midrash that says when she was 20 years old, it's as if she was 7 from the perspective of beauty? And the bigger question that I want to deal with is the next Rashi says the following, the redundancy of these were the years of Sarah. What does that mean? At the beginning of the pasuk it says, Vayu Chayei, and these are the years of Sarah's life, 127. Then it says, the years of Sarah's life. And Rashi says, Kulan shavim letova. They were all equally good. What does that really mean? Equally good? That begs explanation. If we go a little bit into the detailed lifetime of Sarah Imenu, lich'oira, it is far from being good. It's fair to call it painful. It's fair to call it bitter, but equally good. She went through so many troubled times. All the nisyonis Avraham Avinu went through, that he had to leave the country suddenly. Of course, the Midrash tells us that Avraham had to convince her, it's for your best, come with me. Meaning it wasn't such an easy, abrupt change for her to go through. What about the fact she was taken to be together with the king at the time when they were in Egypt, Paro and Avimelech, and then she didn't have kids for so long, and then she had to see Ishmael that she didn't want her son to be with him and to learn from him, and Hagar put her down all the time. And the Midrash says that even before, as she passed away, which is in our parsha, it was done through pain. That's what Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says in the Midrash Tanchuma. And Or HaChaim goes to the extreme to explain that it is the actual tsar, the sorrow, the pain that she went through, thinking that her own son was going to be taken away, was going to be shechted, because that was the nisayon of Avraham Avinu, to see if he's going to shecht his own son to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So before she even realized that it wasn't done at the end, but she heard that it gave her such a fright, and from that pain, says Or HaChaim, that she actually passed away. And he says that that's actually hinted in the words Vayu Chayei. Vayu, we know from the Gemara and the Megillah that it's days of sorrow, of tsar, of pain. So to answer the last question first, the question really doesn't begin, because there's a mistake. There's a big assumption over here in the question that's a mistake, and that is the definition of good. We assume, in Lashon HaKodesh, the definition of good is when we're having a sweet time, everything feels amazing, we feel like smiling all the time, we're so happy. That's incorrect. The definition of good, as is brought down in Sforno in many places, is when something fulfills its purpose. That is what's good. You see that in Bereshis, Perek Aleph Pasuk Dalet, the Sforno over there, Vayar Elokim es ha'or ki tov. After Hashem created each thing, it says it was good, because he saw that it's fulfilling its purpose, and hence it is deserved to be called tov. Therefore also, Kadosh Baruch Hu saw that it wasn't the Adam, when he was created, he wasn't fulfilling his purpose properly when he was on his own, and he needed to have Lo tov yot adam levado. Tov, same idea over there. The Sforno says, and therefore he needed a wife. He needed Chava. The Chochma Musa of Simcha Zissel Mikelem explains this, that Tov is when something is fulfilling its potential, its purpose. And hence, he gives an example. When you build a house, but you don't dwell in the house, you don't live in the house, it's not good, because it's not fulfilling its purpose. If a horse, instead of having the ability to carry people, all it can do is bark and scare people, it might be a good dog, because that's how a dog fulfills its purpose, but it's not a good horse. And hence, by definition, toiv means when something fulfills its purpose to its fullest. Sforno in Pirkei Avos, when he explains what lev toiv is, he says, Shetiyeh kavanat ha'adam, that the kavanah of a person should always be to to seek out to see how he can bring more honor to Hashem, more kfar shamayim, because that's his purpose. That will also help us in understanding why David HaMelech, despite the fact he went through so many nisyonos, and so similar to Sarah Imenu, he was being ran after by his own son, by Shaul HaMelech. He had many nisyonos, and there was a lot of pain and bitter times that he had to go through. And yet, in his Tehillim, he says, the only thing that's good, the only thing I care about, Kirvas Elokim Litov, to get close to Hashem, because that is the purpose of life. To go up and climb the ladder of spirituality and go closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And hence, it's not only despite, but it's thanks to the fact she didn't always have the best and easy times, but she had bitter times and nisyonis times, but she stepped up to the plate and leveraged those times to reach higher heights and get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when a person passes his tests and has nisyonis, and he still goes in the ways of Hashem, despite the isurim and the difficult time and turbulent times he goes through, and that in itself is called toiv, because he's fulfilling his purpose in life. As we mentioned many, many times, the Mesilas Yesharim tells us that is the purpose of life. You're here, Hashem did chesed and created this hallway, this life in this world, to be able to have tzeda laderech, so that we'll be able to get eternal life. And we need to get food for that. And that is al yedei Torah and mitzvahs. And of course, the Mesilas Yesharim emphasizes that by passing tests, that's when we gain a lot of tzeda laderech. And that is what David HaMelech was zocheh to. That's what Sarah Imenu. And that's why perhaps Rashi is saying hakol letoiva, because it is a good life. When you live such a life, it's a good life because you're fulfilling your purpose of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created you for. Toiv is something that has kiyum, it has sustenance, it has life, because that's why the Creator created that thing. As opposed to the opposite of toiv, which is ra. Ra comes from lashon ra'ua. It doesn't have foundations, it doesn't have life, it's not stable. And hence, we want to connect to toiv. Toiv. We want to live our lives for exactly the reason Hashem created us. The Zohar in Parshas Chayei Sarah asks, how come Sarah Imenu was the only woman figure in the Torah that was zeiche that her years were explained at such length, 100 shana, 20 shana, 7 shanim, and that a whole parsha was named after her? And he says exactly this idea, that because despite the fact she went to Egypt, to Mitzrayim, and it wasn't easy there not to get affected by everything she went through and the difficult situations she went through, and in the merit of her passing all these tests, and the fact that she didn't let the tumah of Mitzrayim get to her, and despite the fact she was there, she did mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim, which, by the way, the same as Yaakov Avinu, that he said, I did all the Tayyag mitzvahs, all the 630 mitzvahs, despite the fact I was, many of my years I was around tumah, I was around people that weren't good and didn't get affected by them, meaning he passed his test. So it's b'schut that, says the Zohar, that she reached such a level of completion, such a high level of spirituality, that she was zeiche for all her years to be written. Perhaps this is what Rashi is alluding to, and that's why also she was zeiche, she merited for a whole parsha to be called on her name. We can now answer our first question. Our first question was, I don't understand. Rashi is saying, based on the Midrash, that it says 20 years, that Sarah was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years old, i.e. 127. And the reason it's broken down years all the time, 20 years, because when she was 20, it's as if she had the beauty of a 7-year-old. What do you mean? Beauty? The peak of beauty is more like 20 years old as opposed to 7 years old. Elamai. So I heard this B'Shem Rav Kornfeld, that he wanted to say the following. The beauty we're talking about of a 7-year-old is the beauty that she goes through life. She's always smiling. She has a chen to her because she's ignorant, tamim, from all the different worries in the world around her. And that's in a regular average family where the parents do a good job and she doesn't feel all the difficulties that are in life. But a person that has true emunah and realizes what true good is, true goodness, and what it means to be in this world, and you have 100% belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKol is l'toiva, everything really is for the good, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu does everything just for the better of things for us, even though we don't always understand why, but we have that emunah and bitachon and yediyah even, that everything's for the best. So a person can, as he gets older, he feels the same way. That's exactly what Sarah possessed, that despite the fact she reached 20 years old, where she really could realize all the difficulties in life and maybe that would put her down. But no, she still had that inner beauty, Tamim Hashem, that she was never worried. Nothing stared her. And b'schut that, she was able to reach the level she reached. And all we can say is Yiratzon, that we'll be able to, even in these difficult times that we're at, we should try to leverage off the situation, be Oved Hashem, Mar Bekvod Malchut Shamayim in the world, realize Hashem is running the world, and we'll daven that everyone will see this. All the world will see Hashem's running the world, and all our enemies, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will just throw them away, and Hashem's name will be evident to all, and the soldiers will come home, and the Shvuim, the captives, will come home, and we'll be to Oved Hashem together, Be'achdus, as the Achdus is right now being shown by Jews all over the world. I want to end with a short story that I said a long time ago, but I think it's really fitting, about this person that went through so many surim, so many difficult times, and he couldn't take it anymore. So he went to this big hub. At the time, I think it was Rav Scheinberg, and he's waiting outside. And the person in charge over there said, okay, you're next. So he sits down on the couch and he falls asleep. And as he's falling asleep, he has this following dream that suddenly they call him to Beis Din Lemala. He realizes he passes away. That's what he feels like in the dream. And they call him up. It's his turn. And they say, oh, well, all the white angels come up. All his mitzvahs that he did, all those acts of chesed, all the Torah he learned. And they come up and they all stand on one side of the scale. And then he goes, okay, all the malachei chabala, the black angels, the ones that he created by sinning. Every sin creates a malach chabala. They come to the other side of the scale. And it starts weighing it down. It was even for a while, but suddenly more black angels came. He's like, oh no, oh no. But then someone out there, a voice screamed, but wait a second. How was his life? Everything was easy going, or did he have difficult times? Did he have Isurim? And they said, yes, he had Isurim. That's actually why he was coming to complain to the Rebbe. He says, I can't take it anymore. I'm having such difficult times. All the Isurim, I don't know what color they were, let's say gray, they ran up and they stood together with the white angels. And it was thanks to that his din in Shamayim was decreed as positive, that he can go right now to Gan Eden. As he abruptly was awoken up by the person in charge over there, he says, it's your turn to go to the Rebbe. He says, I don't need to go to the Rebbe anymore. So I think this idea is very relevant in the midst of the days we're in right now, where every Yid's heart is bleeding from what happened and from the situation we are in. We have to dafka now step up to the plate and realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control. Daven for the Malchus of Hashem to be revealed, and by that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will defeat and throw away all our enemies. They'll be able to continue the amazing achdus that can be seen right now, and together be Oved Hashem and leverage off of the pain and suffering we're going through to still be Oved Hashem and run after mitzvahs and help each other as much as possible, like many people are doing now. And through that, we will merit to Vias HaMashiach b'merav yameinu. Amen.
This concludes another episode of The Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Eli Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on The Prism of Torah.